Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to NEWSROOM. I'm your host, Omar Khalid. But today is the 12th of December 2022, and these are the stories that we will be discussing in detail in the course of the show. We will begin with Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, who strongly condemned the unprovoked shelling and firing by the Afghan border forces at Chaman in Balochistan that has resulted in the martyrdom of several Pakistani citizens. Now, he said this in a tweet, and he said that the Afghan interim government should ensure that such incidents are not repeated. This said, the spate of such incidents has been quite regular more or less since the last couple of months. Also, in a press release, Foreign Office spokesperson has said that such unfortunate incidents are not in keeping with the brotherly ties between the two countries. What is the future as far as the brotherly ties between Afghanistan and Pakistan is concerned? Is this something that is going to continue? Can Afghanistan not contain their terrorist elements? This is going to be our first story. Our second segment of the day concerns this visit of the Secretary General of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, Hussein Brahim Taha, who has said that Kashmir is on the top priority of the OIC's agenda. He was addressing a joint press conference along with Azad Jammu and Kashmir President in Muzaffarabad yesterday. He also met with the Prime Minister today. He also had important meetings today, and he also talked about that he will be submitting a comprehensive assessment report on the human rights situation in Kashmir to member countries, and Foreign Ministers' Council of the member countries would also seek permission from India to visit the other side of the line of control, because he also visited the Pakistani side of the line of control, which is something that is not happening from the Indian side. Whether it be the UNMOGIP or other organizations, they are not being given access to that side of the border. This is going to be our second story, OIC and the efforts as far as Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. Next, we'll be talking about Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif Saab, who addressed an important press conference. Today, he talked about the malicious smear campaign that was run against the Sharif family. He talked about the unconditional apology by the Daily Mail that vindicates the stance of the government and his party as well as his family. This is going to be our third story. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to talk about Google that has released its annual year in search, recapping the top trends of 2022 in Pakistan. This revealed that Pakistanis have a diverse range of issues or persons that they search or have searched in the year 2022, whether it be famous personalities, politics, government initiatives, current events, entertainment, technology, or food. This was all that was searched during the year 2022. We'll give a brief outlook of what was discussed during the year, or searched rather, on the internet during this year. Let's come to our first segment, and that concerns the skirmishes that have happened from across the border in Afghanistan. Firing by Afghan border forces at Chaman, Balochistan, that have resulted in the martyrdom of several Pakistani citizens. This has been condemned by the Foreign Office as well as by our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif Saab. More in the following report.
Pakistan, as responsible global actor, has always enshrined some noble principles in its foreign policy toolkit, such as peace, regional equilibrium, strategic balance, shared prosperity, and win-win partnerships. This balanced and broad-based engagement with Afghanistan has always remained significant. Pakistan has always affirmed its resolve to a peaceful, stable, prosperous, and connected Afghanistan for sake of regional stability. Pakistan has condemned the unprovoked and indiscriminate firing on civilian population by Afghan border forces in Chaman, in which 6 Pakistani nationals were killed and 17 others wounded. Foreign Office has emphasized Afghan authorities have been informed that a recurrence of such incidents must be avoided and strictest possible action must be taken against those responsible. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif strongly condemned the firing by Afghan border forces on civilian population, called on interim government in Kabul to ensure that such incidents should not repeat in future. Earlier, Pakistan military's media affairs wing described the incident as uncalled for aggression and said Pakistan troops had given a befitting but measured response and avoided targeting civilians on the other side. Afghan government has to honor commitments on security issues to garner international support, which the people of Afghanistan need desperately against the backdrop of humanitarian and economic crisis. The cowardly terror attacks would not dampen Pakistan's determination to establish peace and eradicate scourge of terrorism.
Usama Nizamani, who is a political analyst, joins us online. Usama, thank you very much to have joined. It had been some time since we had talked on this very show. Nevertheless, welcome back. My first question concerns the reaction from the Taliban government. This is not the first time that we've seen skirmishes from across the border from the Afghan side into the Pakistani side. Why is the Afghan government not able to control such elements, or is there some other mindset or thinking behind it all?
Thank you very much, Omar, for having me on the show. I think the question should best be posed to some spokesperson from Taliban as to why they're not contemplating on this policy, on their international commitment. And I think you and I, we've had this discussion for a very long time in terms of on this very show that Taliban certainly has some international obligations that are still there that they need to meet in terms of denial of Afghan soil to a lot of terrorist organizations, including TTP, ISKP, and I think it's a serious moment of reflection that the Taliban should really be undertaking at this point in time, because we remember that in late November, TTP decided to actually declare an end to its ceasefire with Pakistan's government. And then on the other hand, just after a span of few days and an interval of few days, we saw a dastardly attempt to actually attack the charge d'affaires of Pakistan in Kabul by ISKP, Mr. Ubaid Nizamani, who thankfully survived the attack. Had we not had a brave and a courageous SSG commando over there to receive those 3 bullets and save the life of the charge d'affaires.
Usama, speaking of the envoy, Usama, speaking of the envoy, has there been any progress as far as you know when it concerns investigation into the incident that concerns our Pakistani envoy in Kabul?
I think the only progress that we've seen so far is that a person was apprehended who's known to have connections to ISKP. But I think when we have a crisis which still has not concluded in itself, the thing that really surprises me as an observer sitting over here and seeing things unfold, it really surprises me that Taliban would actually resort to, or would not actually have a more assertive control over their foot soldiers that are manning the Pak-Afghan border on their side. And I certainly do not understand why would Taliban have any exceptions with respect to Pakistan's actions to fence its own border. I think
Usama, when you talk of assertive actions from the Afghan interim government side, do you feel the lack thereof, or maybe not as intensive actions taken by the Taliban interim government points towards some specific mindset of the Afghan Taliban government, or is it just that they haven't been given the proper resources in order to deal with such elements?
I think as long as the question of resources is concerned, I think the resources are still at their disposal, because when the United States actually withdrew from Afghanistan, we all do know, people who have been actually researching about this issue, that Afghan forces were left with and in fact Taliban, who subsequently occupied or came into power, do actually have access to a lot of firepower that was left behind by the US and NATO security forces. So to say that they do not have access to ammunition or the kind of resources that are needed in order to rein in and bring under control militant factions like TDP and ISKP, I think that would be definitely a hard sell. But what I could sense from here is that it perhaps appears there's a breakdown in terms of how the Taliban is trying to assert itself in terms of its policy commitments that it's actually given to the international community and also to regional countries. So
that's a very interesting question, and at the same time, it's a huge question mark as well. When you say policy commitments from the international bodies, they talked about women's rights, they talked about humanitarian issues, and the interim Taliban government has yet to agree to the policies that have been put forward by the international bodies. When it comes to women's rights, when it comes to women's education, we have all seen how things have unfolded in the last few months. Also, they add this, parallel to this is the issue concerning money for the Afghan government. We know also that the funds have not really reached Afghanistan as they should. Do you feel these two things are somehow interconnected?
I think perhaps if, I don't know how interconnected this is, but if I were to make an assessment and an analysis, if say somebody within Taliban's ranks is thinking that perhaps, if, following some kind of a hedging strategy, they could look the other way in terms of the presence of the militant organizations on the Afghan soil, and then see that how it could help them extract some kind of leverages from international community and regional countries, including Pakistan, a country, you know, which has been making a case not just before the international community, but also bodies like OIC. Like earlier this year, you know, Pakistan twice actually made this case before OIC that we need to provide humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan, and that assistance certainly needs to be made at this point in time as we speak right now. But if, say, Taliban is, or somebody within Taliban is making this calculation that perhaps if we, you know, move to this hedging strategy, it can help us, you know, extract some more incentives. I think, you know, a strategy like this would certainly not work. It would not work in Pakistan's case. It would definitely not work in the case of regional countries. And of course, you know, it would be akin to scoring an own goal if Taliban were to follow such kind of an approach and a strategy, because, you know, they have a serious lingering humanitarian crisis at their hand, and then there are also issues of, you know, human rights that they need to address, and including their commitment with respect to, you know, use of the Afghan soil by militant factions. So these are some areas where they definitely need to make progress. And on one hand, you would see, you know, officials of Taliban making statements that, you know, they would certainly want to be part of regional connectivity and trade, you know, this order that would emerge as a consequence of geoeconomics. But until or unless, I think if Taliban are not willing to make those, you know, those moves which would help them meet their domestic and international commitments, I think any kind of headway from regional countries, even including Pakistan, would be a serious sell.
When you talk of headway, Usama, you talk of prospects of international community recognizing the Afghan government. Isn't that so? But that, you know, this is a strange paradox, because on the one hand, the Afghan government, the interim Afghan government, wants to be recognized internationally. On the other hand, Mr. Muttaqi, the interim foreign minister of the Taliban government, said that their soil is not going to be used against any neighboring country. Nevertheless, we see numerous examples of exactly the opposite happening in the last few months, especially concerning Pakistan. Is there some other element behind all of this apart from Afghanistan, or is it just the ISK or the TTP or other such elements that want to create instability or disharmony in Pakistan?
Look, I think we can never be certain when it comes to, you know, outside actors trying to, you know, take advantage from situations like these. But at the end of the day, we understand that, you know, the buck would stop with Taliban, because at the end of the day, they are in the government. They're supposed to be the ones who should be creating that conducive environment, or they should at least be walking the talk in terms of the commitments that, you know, they've given out to Pakistan, to other international actors within the international community. So I think they would need to seriously show some kind of commitment and some progress. Until or unless that does not happen, as I said earlier, you know, it would be really difficult to make this case that, you know, Taliban are serious in terms of, you know, making some kind of progress on the commitments that they've made already.
That is so true, Usama. Thank you so very much, Usama Nizamani, political analyst, joining us and discussing the latest incident that has happened from across the border in Afghanistan into Balochistan, where several people have been, of course, the victims of incidents. This is not the first time that such incidents have happened, and this is a spate of incidents that has been happening since the last couple of months. Pakistan has time and again informed their Afghan brethren and their Afghan counterparts as far as this is concerned. Hinarabani Kharsaba, our State Minister for Foreign Affairs, also visited Afghanistan very recently, in which she also discussed these issues with her counterparts. Brigadier retired Nadir, Defence Analyst, also joins us online. Sir, thank you very much to have joined us. Looking at the incident that has recently happened, in which there were casualties in Balochistan, do you feel there will be any strict action taken by the Kabul authorities as far as the perpetrators of this incident is concerned?
There has been a resurgence of terrorism from Afghanistan into Pakistan for some time, and this is mostly some terrorist groups, but the recent incident and some others also relate to the government in Kabul and their responsibility. and they must take action against all those, whether they are terrorists attacking Pakistan or whether they are some forces of Afghanistan or Afghan forces who have done this heinous act. And Pakistan must insist, and Pakistan has got all the leverage to make sure that there is no more such attacks. And we have to see why these things are happening and why has it certainly there has been a surge or increase. First of all, there is a change in environment. With General Saeed Munir as COS, Pakistan is becoming more stable and secure because there was a period which was going on of uncertainty, and that uncertainty is certainly over. And more than that, General Munir has given a clear policy as soon as he took over, both at LOC Kashmir, that in case India does any misadventure, Pakistan will not only defend every inch, but will go and strike back into India. And similarly, on the western frontier or border of Pakistan, he has talked about the security of entire Baluchistan and KPK and entire Pakistan in that matter. And the Indians are basically against him. So this is geopolitical terrorism which is being instigated by the Indians. The Indians, as propaganda, have been highlighting in the previous period in social media and otherwise that Pakistan is going to have a civil war, or there's going to be anarchy in Pakistan, or Pakistan is going to be destabilized. And now, since that agenda has not worked or is not working, they want to destabilize Pakistan from Afghanistan. That is the only source left with them. So Pakistan has to make sure, through all means possible, all elements of state power that Pakistan has. In Afghanistan is a landlocked country, while we have been supporting Afghanistan, but we can make sure through numerous means, political, military, economic, and others. And besides that, the partners and friends of Pakistan like China and United States both have an interest in a stable Afghanistan and Pakistan not being attacked from that side. So when we take hold of all our own resources, national resources of Pakistan, and also international forces, we can make sure that this border becomes quiet, all quiet on the western front, as they say, and Pakistan is not attacked from that side.
Brigadier Ameer, I'd like to understand something as far as the Afghan government is concerned. Last month, a Frontier Corps soldier embraced martyrdom. 2 more sustained injuries in the midst of a cross-border attack from Afghanistan into Chaman. And now we see this happening. And of course, these are not the first incidents. I'm just, narrating 2 of the incidents, this one and the last one. Do you feel there is a certain reluctance as far as the Taliban regime is concerned to stop this cross-border aggression against Pakistan? Shouldn't they have stopped this by now?
There are 2 points or 2 answers to what you have just asked. First is that there is a reluctance, and secondly, that there is an inability or laxness or weakness or whatever you may call it, or incompetence. So it's or corruption and all that. And I would say that it's both of them. This is my personal view on it. But we have to not only analyze, we have to crystallize our own policy. That is a Pakistani policy. And we have the leverage, on Afghanistan in so many ways. And we can make sure, and we have to make sure, and I've said it previously on your channel, on other channels, if it comes to that, although obviously we are supporting the Afghan government and Afghan people for 40 years now, but if it comes to that, in case of terrorists, we must go across the border and strike them. We must not remain on the defensive. A defensive policy overall is not going to work. If it was a stray incident or an accidental incident, and these things happen, even between friendly forces, as they say, then it was a different matter. But if there is a pattern which is quite obvious, if there is some, as you said, reluctance on their part, or they're trying to use it as a leverage, well, Pakistan has got more leverage than anybody in this region. Pakistan is having tremendous potential, and it's time that, the Pakistani nation fully supports the Pakistan Armed Forces, and the new chief, that is General, he has taken over and he said so in clear words, the policy, which is very clear that if someone attacks Pakistan, it could be anybody, east or west, we must go back and strike. That should be our policy, so that adds to deterrence. Overall, Pakistan wants peace. It wants war avoidance. But how do you ensure deterrence? You ensure deterrence by making sure that the other side, or whichever side was trying this, they understand the language that you're speaking. So General Munir has said so, and we must implement this policy.
All right. Thank you very much, Brigadier Nadir, Sub-Defense Analyst, to have joined us, to have talked to us about, of course, this incident, which adds to the number of incidents that have been happening from across the border from Afghanistan into Pakistan. These incidents that cause casualties in Pakistan. Pakistan has time and again highlighted this. It has again highlighted this after this incident happened. And our Foreign Office, as well as our Prime Minister, as well as our Minister for Interior, have highlighted and have shown great concern about these incidents that have been accumulating since the last couple of months. Let's see where all of this goes, who is behind it, and what is the intention of that party that is trying to destabilize Pakistan. Coming to our second story, ladies and gentlemen, that concerns Pakistan, the OIC's Secretary General Hussain Brahim Taha, who is in Pakistan on his maiden visit. He has reiterated the OIC's full support for the reconciliation of the Kashmir issue. That and more is part of our second segment. More in the following report.
Almost all foreign colonies and subjugated people who were represented in General Assembly today as sovereign nations secured their independence by exercising their right to self-determination. But there are situations where occupied people are being systematically denied this right. Narendra Modi-led Hindutva Indian government is aggressively pursuing imperial occupation model in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Kashmiris have been demanding their UN-recognized right to self-determination for over 7 decades, but India is unleashing gory brutalities on the people of occupied Kashmir to suppress their just cause of freedom. OIC Secretary General Hussain Brahim Taha, accompanied by 5-member delegation, is on Pakistan visit with top agenda of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari emphasized that Organization of Islamic Cooperation should lead diplomatic effort to find lasting solution of Jammu and Kashmir dispute in accordance with United Nations Security Council resolutions. Secretary General OIC Hussain Brahim Taha visited Azad Jammu and Kashmir and paid his respects and offered Fatiha in memory of people who sacrificed their lives for Kashmir cause. Secretary General also visited line of control Chakoti sector and met with the families of Kashmiri victims of cross-border firing. OIC Secretary General assured the oppressed Kashmiri brethren that OIC, being a Muslim community, is making constant efforts to find a solution to their issue in consultation with the world community.
To discuss the visit of the OIC Secretary General Hussain Brahim Taha to Pakistan and the importance in the context of the issue of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, we've been joined by Ambassador Rizwan Saeed Sheikh. He's Pakistan's permanent representative in the OIC. Ambassador Saab, thank you very much to have joined us, to have given us the time. Ambassador Saab, the visit of Hussain Brahim Taha comes at a time when we see continuous barbarities in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir Valley. What, in your point of view, should be the contours of the OIC plan to galvanize support for the entire Muslim world against what is happening in the occupied valley, and how important is this visit in this context?
Thank you for having me on this news show. And Bismillah Rahman Rahim and Assalamu Alaikum to your viewers. Well, this visit is certainly significant and historic in the sense that it is the first time that the Secretary General OIC not only came to Pakistan on a country visit. This Secretary General has previously been there to Pakistan twice for the extraordinary OIC CSM last year and then the 48th session of the Council of Foreign Ministers in March. But this is the first time he is on a country visit to Pakistan. And as I said, it is historic in the sense that he visited the line of control. You have yourself just mentioned that laid a wreath on the tomb of martyrs. Not only that this Secretary General's visit is for the first time, there is another first, that the permanent representatives, which is my counterparts of countries that are represented or on the OIC contact group on Jammu and Kashmir, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Niger and Azerbaijan, they also visited for the first time. And as you have said, what could be the contours of an OIC action on Jammu and Kashmir? Well, the 48th session of the Council of Foreign Ministers in Islamabad, for the first ever time in OIC's history, which is a consistent history of support to the Kashmir cause, came up with a plan of action on Kashmir, which has multiple addresses. It addresses tasks and targets that have been assigned to the General Secretariat, the Special Envoy of the Secretary General on Jammu and Kashmir, the contact group, the member states, the OIC missions in New York, Geneva, the OIC group missions in New York and Geneva, and also the other institutions within the OIC family, whether they are in the economic domain, whether in the cultural domain or the humanitarian domain, all have been assigned specific tasks to move in concert for a peaceful settlement of the Kashmir dispute, which forms a principled position at the OIC that it has consistently maintained as a symbol, the ultimate symbol of support to the Kashmiri people. One important point that needs to be understood by everyone is that OIC is indispensable to the Kashmir cause. Well, if you speak for Pakistan, we are ourselves a party to the Kashmir dispute. And if we say something on Kashmir, it would be taken by the rest of the world in that vein. But when OIC speaks out on Kashmir and expresses its unwavered, unflinching support and consistent support for Pakistan's principled position for a peaceful settlement in accordance with the relevant UN resolutions and the aspirations of the Kashmiri people, it lends the weight of its 57 member states to our position on the Kashmir cause, and that's invaluable.
Ambassador Rizwan, Saeed, Sheikh, what more needs to be done as far as implementation of all the resolutions that have been put forward under the ambit of the OIC or other organizations? Do you feel that pressure tactics need to be now put as far as India is concerned so that it can change its strategy that it has been implementing since the last few decades on the Indian-held valley?
Certainly, there is a lot more that can be done and that should be done, particularly after the Indian illegal actions and the spate and litany of illegal actions that India has taken since August 5th, 2019. It has become a more concentrated legal battle because the weight of the law, the weight of the history, the weight of the geography, sociology, economy is on Pakistan's side. And we could certainly galvanize support not only at the OIC but other international fora. One thing that has to be borne in mind is that OIC is not a military organization. It's a political organization, and the best it can do is lend political support to Pakistan's principled position. The solution, as you have mentioned, does not lie in accordance with the OIC resolutions. The solution is prescribed, guaranteed, or underwritten by the relevant UN resolutions, and OIC itself is also seeking the implementation of those very resolutions that the UN has been passing over the years, whether it pertains to the UN Security Council or UN General Assembly or even other bodies that have pronounced themselves over the past 7.5 decades on the Jammu and Kashmir dispute.
All right, Ambassador Sahab, also I'd like to understand that under the ambit of the OIC, what more can be done? I mean, you said political, we can, work politically under the ambit of the OIC. So what more can be done politically under the OIC as far as trying to find some kind of solution to the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir issue?
Well, there are a number of steps which have been pronounced in the recent OIC resolution. One is that OIC seeks to send a fact-finding mission to the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir by writing a letter to the Indian president. That is to be done by the OIC in implementation of that mandate. And more, what OIC has been assigned in terms of a specific task for the Humanitarian Affairs Department at the OIC is to catalog the spate of Indian illegal actions and place them under the different human rights as they exist or they are recognized in the modern world. There are about 30 human rights, and whatever has been going on in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir has been in contravention of each one of those rights. So in order to build a legal case at the international level, OIC can catalog that, and there is an independent permanent human rights commission at the OIC which also has been assigned a specific task in this regard, and the relevance of this commission was proven in 2018 and 2019 respectively, when its report on Kashmir was basically picked up by the UN Human Rights Council and cited in 2 successive reports issued on the human rights violations in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Post-2019, the resolution, again unanimously passed in Islamabad by OIC member states at the Council of Foreign Ministers, seeks for the Human Rights Council to update its report and come up with the recent situation and come up with an update on how the number of violations and the nature of violations, the extent of human rights violations has enhanced, and the ensuing humanitarian crisis has made the life difficult for Kashmiris in the occupied valley. And also what OIC can do particularly is to equate basically the Palestinian and the Kashmiri issue, because in terms of the genesis of both issues, not only that the solution is prescribed or premised on the right to self-determination of either the Kashmiri people or the Palestinian people, but the script of the occupiers is also the same. Because if you see the Israeli settlement policies or the changes that India has been introducing in the demography of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir has almost the same fingerprints. So by equating these issues, by taking them on a common plane, the organization stands a better chance to make its effort on both the Palestinian as well as the Kashmiri cause more meaningful.
Thank you so very much, Ambassador Rizwan Saeed Sheikh, Pakistan's permanent representative to the OIC, to have joined us and to have talked to us about the visit of the OIC Secretary General Hussein Brahim Taha, who has reiterated the OIC's full support for the resolution of the Kashmir issue. It's a very important visit in the context of what is happening in the Indian-held valley. We've also been now joined by Hamza Ameer, who is an analyst. Hamza, thank you very much to have joined us. Hamza, I'd like to quote what Hussein Brahim Taha said. And he said, quote unquote, I think the most important thing is to find a channel of discussion between stakeholders, that is India and Pakistan, and we are working on a plan of action on this regard in collaboration with the Pakistani government and other member countries. Do you feel there is some kind of a channel of discussion that both the countries can hold as far as the Indian-held valley and other thorny issues are concerned? Or do you feel India has shut down that door for the moment?
Well, thank you, Omar. I think India has shut down that door since it took the actions in 2019, because they took a unilateral decision. Now, what the first step should be to actually make India realize that they should reverse that decision, because it is not a unilateral matter. It is a bilateral matter between India and Pakistan. And so that needs to be recognized first for them to actually find any further forward movement as far as the Kashmir dispute and the dialogue on that way forward is concerned. So I think India has already shut that door down very conveniently to their own comfort. And we've actually, if we're still talking on those lines, I think it's only kind of a rhetoric solution that we're looking into, because India has done what it had to do. It has turned the special status of the Jammu and Kashmir upside down unilaterally without even consulting anybody, and the international community has not done or raised its voice to the extent that it should have. So I think India has not left any door open for Pakistan or even for any other organization to actually compel them to come to table talks, because it is a bilateral issue and they do not recognize this now anymore as a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan.
Now, Hamza, this brings to roll now the importance of the OIC as an organization that represents all the Muslims of the world. We've got two important issues. We've got the issue of illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and that of Palestine, two thorny issues that plague the Muslim world and the world in general as well. How important becomes the role of the OIC? I just talked to Ambassador Rizwan Saeed Sheikh, and he said that the role of the OIC is a role that is political in nature, and it's not a military organization, which of course is quite understandable. But politically, what are the contours around which the OIC could work in order to find a solution to this issue?
See, the one thing that strengthens OIC is that it represents the Muslim world. It is the voice of the Muslim world as an organization in one voice. And when OIC stands on the notion that Pakistan's position on Kashmir is justified, then that should be actually recognized. So that is one solid, strong voice coming out of the Muslim world as a representation by the OIC platform. So I think that value OIC holds very greatly. But what have we seen in the past happen is that, we've given out statements even from the OIC itself, and then it has been OIC as an organization also that is also invited the same India that it sits in Islamabad and criticizes of violating the human rights rules and the United Nations relevant resolutions on Jammu and Kashmir. It actually has also taken that step for inviting their foreign minister, the then sitting foreign minister, to come and hold a speech at the OIC platform. Despite the fact that Pakistan is a founding member, they boycotted that event, they boycotted that whole procedure, yet it was actually, they went through with it. So that is something that raises questions on how strongly OIC would actually be able to stand when it comes to taking the next step forward of taking this as a campaign, a full-fledged campaign represented by the OIC as the voice of the Muslim world in Pakistan, and put it forward at the United Nations at the highest platforms, global platforms, as a voice for the people of Kashmir, which should be echoed with the notion and stance of Pakistan.
What, in your point of view, becomes the role of the OIC now? Now we've got Mr. Hussain Ibrahim Taha, who's here, who's understood, who went to the LOC, who went to Azad Jammu and Kashmir, met with the people on a one-on-one basis, understood their problems as well. Not the first time that an international leader has come and visited the line of control or Azad Jammu and Kashmir, but how significant does it become in the whole context of whatever is happening in the Muslim world, whatever is happening in the Indian-held Jammu and Kashmir, and of course all the eyes and the fingers pointing towards the OIC as to finding a solution to issues that plague the Muslim world?
Omar, I think that there has to be a parallel drawn between how the security situation of the region at large actually depends not only on Afghanistan but also on the situation in Jammu and Kashmir. The dispute actually is now should be raised at a level of human rights, at a level of security challenges for the region, and at the same time it should be raised as on part of India as well. That when we talk about Afghanistan, I have seen a very concentrated debate going on even in Islamabad regarding the human rights situation in Afghanistan, about the education in Islamabad, about the human rights violations that are being committed in Kabul and in other places, and how the world actually seems to be very concentrated on that notion. I think there should be a parallel drawn when it comes to the situation of security and human rights that is related to Kashmir is concerned as well, because Pakistan and India are two major role players of the regional security and regional decision makers, and that needs to be drawn in the same line as it is drawn for the situation of Afghanistan. Once we do that, and if we are able to actually carry that line forward, then I think we will be able to draw a parallel of Afghanistan situation of human rights and the situation of Kashmir on human rights as well. Both of them should be taken as a major security challenge for the region at large, and the role players in the region should be actually compelled to come not only as their voice for Afghanistan, they should also be coming as a voice for the people of Kashmir.
All right, thank you very much, Hamza, Ameer, to have joined us. That brings us to the end of today's show. We'll see you tomorrow, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.